I brought the board to come and meet all of us. In this video, we are going to be talking about shorts. We're going to first start with the measurements that we need. So the first one is your natural waist circumference, round about your hip line. That is from your natural waist down to the fullest part of your hip. And the next one is your hip circumference. Then you have your crotch line, your crotch extension. We'll be learning how to get crotch extensions. Okay. Your next one is your apex point, which is your nipple to nipple point. That's where you'll be using to get your dart and the length of your shorts. So that's all the measurement that we're going to be needing here. So let's get right into the creation of these shorts. All I'm just going to first do is to mark half an inch above this. Remember, this is a custom measurement. It is a custom measurement. So we're going to start from this green line instead of the top of the paper. So it's a custom measurement. Let's start by marking the vertical measurements. What are your vertical measurements? Your vertical measurement is your hip line, okay? That's your waist to your hip. You're going to mark that. Your crotch line, that is from your waist to where your crotch joining is. And okay, let's talk about waistband. I should never have forgotten that. Your waistband. Usually, your waistband is between 1 inch, 2 inch, 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inches, depending on the type of trouser that you're making. If you're making a high waist pant that has an elaborate waistband, you're going to be using 2-inch band, or even as much as a 2.5 inch. But the standard for me is 1.5. I use between 1 to 1.5 depending on what I want to achieve. So if I want to put an elastic thread, like a full elastic band in my trouser, I use 2 inch. So you see, it varies. Now for this short, I'm going to be creating a corporate pant, so I would be sticking to 1.5 inch. Inside this same short now, I'm going to be creating an elastic band short. That is an everyday wear short. So this would still work. So we're going to be taking our measurements now. Instead of starting from this point, this is for beginners. This is all for beginners. It will mean that you've started your measurement all the way. So you've taken it out like that. So the length of this short is 17, and I'm going to add 2-inch seam allowance. The 2-inch seam allowance. Just come here, start from 1.5. Don't forget, and mark 19. I'll just connect that line briefly, and then we'll get right into creating our shorts. So what are the other vertical measurements? The other vertical measurements, we have our hip line. My own hip line, we're going to be taking out this. We're going to be taking out this 1.5, and my hip line is 9 inches. That's the fullest part of my hip, right? And my crotch extension is 12.5. So I'm going to be marking that also. Mark it here for uniformity. Mark it on both sides for uniformity. 9, okay, and 12.5. Mark it here, 9, 12.5. So we've gotten this vertical measurement. Now let's go into the circumference measurement, shall we? I'm going to be starting from this point because it seems like this point is the straightest point. And I'm going to just mark my hip measurement on my natural waistline, excluding the band, of course. I'll mark my hip measurement here. I'll mark my hip measurement on my hip line, and I'll mark the hip measurement on the crotch line because that's what we are using to generate.
Confused on that. I'm going to refer you to my video, how to take proper body measurements. So you're going to watch that video now because I explained fully how to measure your crotch line, how to measure for a proper trouser. So you see that I didn't do anything measurements taking here. So kindly pause this video and go and watch that now.
Everything. So what is my hip measure? My hip circumference? My hip circumference is 43. Is not general, okay? My hip circumference is 43. So this is 40, 41, 42, 43. 43. So mark that point. Mine is 10.75. I'm still mark 10.75. No mark. So I've not added any allowance to the front. I've not added any allowance to the front. Take note of that. Okay. So this is going to be the center. This is going to be the side. This is the center. This is the side. Please, let's take note. Let's take note. Now, to derive our crotch extension, the standard way to derive our crotch extension is to divide your hip measurement by 16. Crotch extension. What's going on? So crotch extension, that is hip circumference divided by 16. So you divide your hip circumference, and that will mark there. You divide your hip circumference by 16, and whatever you get, that is your front hip extension. And then for somebody like me, I'm going to be adding 1 cm, that's 0.5. 0.5. So you add it on your calculator. 0.5. That's becomes, so it was 2.6 before, right? I rounded it up. 2.7 rather, I rounded it up. 2.7 plus 0.5. That's 1 cm, okay? So it's now come up to 3.1, 3.188. So that is what I'm going to be using for my front crotch extension. So start measuring yours like this. Hip circumference, this is the standard hip circumference divided by 16. Now, it's from this hip that we've measured here that I'm going to now mark the extension from. So it will be 3.1. See, it's very, very particular. That's why I'll ask you to use pencil. Use pencil. So mark this extension like this. Okay? And the way you are going to curve it is that if you don't have a ruler, you mark 1 inch upwards and then use your free hand to connect the dots. But if you have a curved rule, just do this. There's something under that place. So just do this. Up on something here. So just do this and then you get your crotch extension. Now, I want you, we are going forward, especially for ease, especially for the ease of this, okay? So here on this waist, here on this natural waistline, you're going to mark half an inch and you're going to come in. Sorry, very wrong. Here on this center point, you're going to mark half an inch and you're going to come in. You're going to come from this hip point and you're going to connect it. You're going to come from this point and you're going to just connect it. So this variation, this is not for everybody type. This variation is for people with a flatter belly. If you have a prominent belly that might want to almost be the same size as your hip, or it wants to be maybe something that is very prominent, you understand what I mean? You're going to extend it forward for ease. You're going to extend it forward by half an inch for ease. But for people with flatter belly, this is what we're going to be using. This one, see this line. So I don't want to confuse you. We're not going to be using this. We're not going to be using this from this measurement. Okay, take note of this measurement. Now from this point, we're going to be marking the we're going to be marking the we're going to be marking the natural waist circumference. The waist of this person is 27, so that is 6.75. 6.75. So we're going to mark that point and then we're going to give 1 inch for sewing allowance, that is 7.75. And then we're going to now okay, so we're going to connect this point to the hip line. We're going to connect this point to the hip line. Is connect this point to the hip line just like this. And the next thing that you're going to do is that you're going to mark from this crotch extension to where your hip line is, okay? To where your hip measurement is. You know that we took hip measurement here, we took hip measurement here. So to the end of this place, and mine is 14 inches. Now you're going to divide 14 inches into 2. You know that my own will be easy because it's a round figure. So imagine that you had 13.75. You're going to divide 13.75 into 2. So now what you're going to do is that from this point, you're going to, from this point, right? Let me turn the tape so I'll not confuse anybody. From this point, you're going to mark 7 inches. You're going to mark 7 inches because you want to get the center point of this thing. So from this point also, you're going to also mark 7 inches. And also from this point on the short hemline, you're also going to mark 7 inches. Connect these lines very quickly. We're almost done. See our trouser? The front of our trouser is almost done. So you're going to connect this line like this. And then on top, on this point, we're going to be marking ½ inch on both sides. Now, that intake that you're going to be taking will be depending on the size of the person. No. It will depending on the size of the person and the style that you want to achieve. So all that you just need to do is mark ½ inch on both sides, and then you mark 4 inch downwards. 4 inch downwards. For this is a simple style, so you're not trying to do any dart manipulation or anything. So you're going to mark downwards. You're going to mark downwards. Okay. And we have created our dot line. So this 1 inch now, this 1 inch that we removed here, we have taken it back out for the this thing. So one thing that I didn't do properly here is that we're supposed to leave an allowance. We're supposed to leave an half-inch allowance. We're supposed to have added it to our hip half-inch allowance for all round sewing on this place. So all we just need to do now is, hey, I forgot something important. We need our thigh measurements. Our thigh measurements. We forgot that. We're going to be taking our thigh measurements on this crotch extension. The thigh measurement for this person is, what's the thigh measurement, sir? The thigh measurement for this person for this shot is 26, and we're going to be, okay, let's not forget something. Your natural waist, your natural hip, your natural waist, the fullest part of your hip will all be divided into 4. The measurement will be divided into 4. Why? Because this part of your trouser, right, this part of your trouser is divided into 4 in measurement. When you cut on fold, this front panel will be cut on fold. Front panel will be divided into 2. So that is 1, 2 makes 1 front, and the front now is the half of your body. Now, when you cut the back panel will be divided into 2, 1, 2, and the back now is and that panel is the back of your body. But now the thigh area is going to be divided into 2. Why? Because the thigh area is 2 individual thighs. So thigh area is 1 front on 1 thigh and 1 back for 1 thigh. 1 front for 1 thigh and 1 back for 1 thigh. 2 individual thigh, 1 on the left, 1 on the right. Does that make sense to us? So we're going to take our thigh measurements. I can't believe I forgot that. We're going to take our thigh measurements. What is your own thigh? Thigh measurement divided by 2. Thigh measurement is not divided by 4. So this person's thigh is we're going to be using 26. And I'm going to add half an inch to it. So we're going to be, so you know what? We're going to come down by 1.5 to get the thigh measurement. We're going to come down by 1.5 to get the thigh measurement. So now on this point, we're going to be marking our 13 plus half inch. 13 plus half inch. 13 is the thigh measurement of this person. And also for ease, I'm just going to mark the 13 here plus a half inch, because it's going to be a straight shot. If you want a fitted shot, you can now slant it down like this. Oh my god, what did I do? So you're going to mark 13 plus half inch. But mind you, what you need to do here is that you need to make sure that this 13 now, 13 and a half, you divide it into 2 equal parts. 13 and a half divided into 2 equal parts is 13 and a half divided into 2. You can divide it on your tape into 2 equal parts is 13.75. So you're going to mark 13.75 here. I think it already aligned, but it does not equal for everybody. And you're going to mark you're going to mark 6.75 here. 6.75 here, and you're going to mark 13.5 here, and you're also going to come down here and mark 6.75 on this side, and you're going to mark 13.5 on this side. So the next thing that you're going to do is to connect from your hip to this point, and then you're going to connect from your crotch extension to this point. You're going to connect it to this point. You're going to connect it to this point. So if this short now is a loose fitting short, if it was a tighter fitted short, you'll see that the thing will curve like this, right? It's supposed to have a slight curve to the hip. So I'm going to make mine like this. Okay, so that is it for the front panel of our shorts. Let me cut it out for people to see carefully. The way this cutting goes, remember that we're not cutting here, we're not cutting here. We're just going to be cutting. Just going to be cutting from our natural waistline. Okay, I'm going to come to this point that we slanted inwards. I'm going to do this. Okay, remember that if you have another hip shape, everybody's crotch extension cannot be, what is it, everybody's crotch extension cannot be 3.18. So this is how we are able to derive our crotch extension without stressing our brain. You divide your hip measurement, your round hip, full hip measurement, you divide it by 16. This is a textbook proven method. It's from a lot of study. I've gone ahead to ask, okay, why do we have to divide it by 16? So this is the shot that I've created. Let's make this point not too pointy. No, I feel like this thing should curve inside like this. It feels too straight. It feels odd. I feel like it should curve inside like this. Let me do something. Let me do something. Let me reduce the under hip to 12. The under thigh rather to 24. No, 24. And then I'll add half an inch. So it will become 6 1/4. 6 1/4. And then 12 1/2. So that I'll be able to curve it like this from this line. Be able to curve it like this. And then I'll curve it like this. I don't know, it just feels too straight. But I've sewn straight shorts. So why am I being paranoid? Let's cut this out. Okay, it looks much better in my eye. It's a little bit much better. Okay. So don't be paranoid that, oh, the crochet station is too long. Oh, the crochet station is too this. According to your hip size, take your measurements and let it work for you. Is that okay? Is that okay? So your own does not have to look like this. Your own shall has to look like trouser. It does not have to look like. Let's go to the back panel. Sharp. Okay, so we are back and we have placed this front pattern that we're going to be using to generate the back pattern. Very easy from this point on. You don't need to do too much. Again, let's just trace the hip line, the natural waistline, just a little. This is your hip. This is your crotch. Front rise. This is your front rise. This is your thigh. This is the length. We've done that. This is your waist. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to come inside. I'm going to mark this point, okay? And it's from that point you're going to come inside, right? By 1.5. You see, you will know the reason why I'm marking 1.5 in a minute up there. And then from this waistline, you're going to mark 1.5. So make sure that it's on the same point. Mark it upwards like this. Make sure that it's the same. So you see this. And then now you're going to connect this line on the same waist measurement that you use for the front. But this time around, you're going to be adding allowance to the back. You see, we didn't add any allowance to the front. We did not. But this allowance now, we're going to add half an inch all round when we are cutting it. Half inch all round for seam allowance. I should have put it on the paper. So the front now is 8 inches. So 8 inches must get to the waistline. 8 inches must get to the waistline from that point, from that 1.5 point. Please use your pencil. Okay. So this now is your waist, including that, right? Including that. Is it 8 inches? You know. Yes. Including that. So now we're going to add 1 inch seam allowance on this waist point. So take note of that. Now we're going to be connecting this to our crotch line. But on the crotch line, we're going to come down by 0.5. 0.5 inches. So, and we're going to come down by 0.5. We're going to extend it by extending it by 1 inch. So now this is for people with flatter bum. Don't use up to 1 inch. For me, I'm not going to be using up to 1 inch. I'm going to be using 0.75. For people with bigger bum, then you can add 1 inch to it. Okay. So now I'm going to be connecting this. Okay. I'm going to be connecting that. Let me see if I can make use of my roller. This ruler is just useless to me at this point. It is. Let me see if a straight ruler can work for me. Okay. Okay. So it's because of this decoration that I don't want to do. I don't want to over decorate it. So now all we're going to do is that we are going to mark 1 inch allowance on the hip too. We're going to mark 1 inch allowance on the hip too, right? And you're going to mark 0.75 on the this point, 0.75 on this point. Okay, I'm going to connect this to this, connect this to this, connect this to this. Don't finish. Oh, we are done. Now, if you have this short pattern, you can use it to create. You see all these styles that I'm showing you, all of them. The pleats, so the styles that I'll be showing you, the pleats. So that's if maybe if you don't have enough material. The gathers, the step gathers, the layer gathers. You can create all of them. So I'm going to curve this a little bit inside because that's how we roll. I'm going to make sure that I curve it a little inside. Mhm. Supposed to be curved. Do you see this? Do you see this? Last but not the least, last but not the least, we're going to add a dart. And to add a dart here, this is where our apex measurement comes to play. You're just going to mark your apex point, which is 4 inches for me. Mark it like this, the way it's slant. I'm going to be marking it. And then for the back now, it's going to be ½ inch longer. The front is 4 inch. Remember, we mark 4 inch length, while the back, we're going to be marking 4.5 inches. So connect that line, and at the back, we're going to be using, and at the back, we're going to be using a dart of 0.7, okay, 0.5 on both sides. Okay, connect it to this line. Remember, when you are cutting, you're going to notch this dart point. You're going to notch. So let's cut it out. Build this. Build this back pattern. This is the front pattern. We're going to go ahead and cut this. Remember, times 2, times 2. Cut this. For the front pattern now, you're going to put allowance all around. For the back pattern, we've already added allowance to the back. We've already added allowance to the back pattern, and you do not need to add any extra sewing allowance. Okay.